Hmm?
A winter coat on.
It's not really a winter July 21st, 2020, Grand Forks County Commission meeting to order. Please note for the record that all commissioners are present either in person or via telephone. So the first order of business, I guess, is going to be housekeeping. And I just want to say that for individuals that are participating by telephone, please identify yourself prior to speaking. Please speak loudly. Please do not use the speaker function on your telephone. Please mute your phone unless you're speaking. And once you are done speaking, please mute your phone again. So any questions on that? Okay, hearing none. The next item is approval of the minutes. We have minutes from July 7th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the July 7th minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next item is the approval of the order of the agenda. Are there any additions that need to be made? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda, the order of the agenda?
So moved, Dave.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the order of the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Each of you have gotten copies of the bills, employee status changes, overtime, financial reports, and check reissuance. Is there anything there that you would like to have pulled for further discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is Grand Sky Construction Company, and we have Mr. Brad Gerken. Welcome.
Good afternoon, commissioners and Tom and Debbie. This is the first time I've done a Zoom meeting with the commission.
Hey.
The project that I bring before you today for your consideration is the utility extension project for Grand Sky. I believe everybody has the summary and a map or a plan view of the project within their package. This particular project is to extend sewer, water, and fire water lines north along Grand Sky Boulevard and east along Lady Hawk Drive towards the apron. And we had, the project was advertised in the Herald Legals for 3 weeks as required by the state. We had 3 bidders to bid. The lowest bid for the base bid plus the first option, which is, if you look at your plan view, shows the option 1 is at the top of the sheet. That's in a black dashed box. That will be included in the project. But the low bidder was R.J. Zavrols and Sons, and 2 other bidders bid. United Crane bid and Robertson Excavation bid as well. And the bids were very tight. They were within $8,000 on a $410,000 project. But as I indicated in the summary, I am proposing that we or that the commission approve Grand Sky awarding this project to R.J. Zavrol and Sons. Any questions?
Thank you. Anyone have questions of Mr. Gerken? Mr. Ford, do you have information on funding?
Oh,
Ma'am, this will come through, or this will be paid through the state-provided EUL development grant. So it falls within that scope and allotted scope of work.
Okay, thank you. Again, any questions of Mr. Durkin? Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion, please?
Move approval, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion to approve R.J. Zavro and Sons. Do I have a second?
Second, Dave.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Gherkin.
Thank you, and I will leave you now as well. Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you. Take care. Next item is public health, and I believe we have Ms. Swanson with us today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, Commission members. This is Debbie Swanson from the Grand Forks Public Health Department. I don't have a formal presentation for you, but I do have a little bit of updated information that I can share, and then I'd be happy to entertain any questions relative to our COVID-19 situation in Grand Forks County. As you know, our cases have been climbing since about the beginning of July, or the second week of July. So we've been seeing a steady increase. As of today, we have 103 active cases. We continue to get large volumes over the last couple of weekends, and the weekends tend to be the time when we get reports of cases because the testing seems to be completed in our county Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then by Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday, the active cases roll in and we begin our contact tracing work. The last time we were at 102 active cases was on May 22nd. That was at a time when we had a large number of our cases drop off precipitously because of a large workplace event, and then those cases dropped off, and then we had a really nice longer period of slower activity, and now we seem to be seeing larger volumes each day. For example, last weekend, over a 4-day period, we had 45 cases, and then the most recent 5-day span, we've had 86 cases. So it seems to be increasing quite a bit. We did a large testing event. Oh, before I go on to the testing event, I just want to also reiterate that as of yesterday, there were 2 patients currently hospitalized, and we remain at 4 deaths. So the good news is that our death rate has not increased. As you may know, we had a large testing event on the 16th for the general public held at the Alara Center, and we tested 1,596 individuals. 49 people from that event that were residents of North Dakota tested positive for around a 3% positivity rate, which is up a little bit from what we see across North Dakota. And then 42 of them were from Grand Forks County and 7 were from outside of Grand Forks County. The numbers of individuals from Minnesota, for example, if they came from East Grand Forks to our testing event, those are referred by our lab to Minnesota, so we don't always see those numbers, but sometimes we'll hear about them anecdotally because we know we consider ourselves kind of one large community with the cities of Grand Forks and East Grand Forks. And we've certainly seen with COVID that we see clusters of counties. When one county on one side of the river is high, the other county can be as well. And a lot of that is related to workplace, which is what I really wanted to focus on mostly today, is that we are seeing a large number of individuals that are in workplaces, and whether or not they experience transmission in the workplace, it's affecting the workplace. So maybe their transmission is in a community setting or a social setting, but then they return to work, get tested, find out they're positive, and it has an impact on that workplace. Everything from banks to restaurants to our own withdrawal management center this last weekend, to a real variety of businesses. People are being impacted by positive tests that require a number of close contacts who have to be quarantined. In some cases, that means closing for a period of time. So we are going to do some focused work with businesses and ask that they really ask their employees to be really vigilant about social distancing, wearing of masks, washing hands, making their trips essential, so that we can really contain the virus spread and transmission in our county. Preventing community spread is just such a very important element to being able to open our schools, open our university, and continue to operate businesses. So we really need a lot of cooperation from the public at large. Grand Forks County has really been a leader in that, and we greatly appreciate that. Your leadership by keeping the county office building closed, allowing people to work remotely, and offering virtual opportunities and requiring masks in county facilities are all the kinds of things that we're asking others to do. So thank you for your leadership in that regard. The largest number of people that we're seeing that are having positive tests are those in the categories of ages 20 to 29, which of course presents a lot of challenges for us as we think about university students returning to campus. It also places a lot of demand on testing, and while there are some testing efforts being stood up, it's going to be hard to do all the testing that will be necessary to contain transmission in our county. So it becomes even more important that we do those prevention measures and really go back to some of the basics. I think what we're finding in our contact tracing is that our cases no longer have 3 to 5 contacts. They have 10 to 20 close contacts. And a lot of those come from social circles or activities like bars, restaurants, special events, 4th of July picnics, a real variety of social activities that people seem to have kind of forgotten that the virus is still out there. So I will end there with my remarks, and I can certainly provide a presentation at future commission meetings. I have to say it's been a really busy time again, and thus I didn't get an opportunity to pull together a PowerPoint, but can certainly do that for future meetings. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We too really appreciate all that you folks are doing. And we appreciate all the information that you share with us. And so thank you for that. Commissioners, do you have any questions? I have one.
Dave, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Debbie, in the contact tracing, how about the raceway, for example? Is that showing up as a place that was a social or other event that may have caused any spike?
That's a good question. I can pose that question to our contact tracers. I have not heard it mentioned specifically. We did hear about a couple of other events, one of them being the food truck festival at Home of Economy, and they did decide not to have that event because we did share with them that a number of people in our contact tracing had reported that as an activity. But I haven't heard specifically about the Speedway, so I will follow up and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one also that relates to the contact tracing. When your staff reach out to them, are they pretty cooperative?
Well, that's a good question as well. And maybe I will at some point in the future have them join me to give you a little bit of a flavor of the experience of being a contact tracer. I think for the most part, people who test positive are very appreciative of the efforts to provide resources and information, but it's always a shock to people when they find that out. We've had really good luck with people sharing their workplaces, allowing us to contact employers if we need to, and sharing their close contacts. But one of the challenges we have is, number one, when they have a lot, they don't remember what they are, who they are, or how to reach them. And then secondly, we have more challenges with the contacts. The contacts feel like, okay, I'm quarantined now, but I'm not sick and I'm feeling fine, and I don't want to stay home for 14 days. So I think it's among the contacts. And it's so important. You can't test out of quarantine. Contrary to what a lot of people might think, I'll just be tested up, my test is negative, I'm fine. But you have that whole 14-day period that you could potentially be infectious to others, and that's why it's so important for those individuals to stay home too. So that's where I would say the greater number of our challenges are, more so than those individuals who need strict isolation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for all your information and all that you do. And please pass that along to your staff as well.
I will do so. Madam Chair, I wonder if I could just offer up one additional point of information, and that is Dr. Walls has indicated his interest in being reappointed as the county health officer, and if the commission would like to take that up at a future meeting, I'll be happy to send you the necessary information.
Okay, are you able to maybe do that at the next meeting?
Yes, I can do that
The
for
first
your
meeting that we have in August? Whatever works for you. You are the busiest, and not that we aren't, but not like you. And I know that you have a time frame there that you have to meet. So whatever works for you, get a hold of Debbie and we'll get you on the agenda.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Take care. Okay, next item is emergency manager. Kari, are you with us?
I am, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Just a couple of updates. First of all, obviously, we have a shelter-in-place order going on right now, and we're working on getting further information, but as of right now, they do have a barricaded suspect. So the saga continues. Second of all, I was notified by our contractor that our hazard mitigation plan has been submitted to the state of North Dakota for review. As soon as we get that plan approved, we'll be able to move forward with some of the mitigation projects that Nick has been talking about with the state, as well as City of Manville has some mitigation projects. So we're highly anticipating an approved plan, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We were next in the queue, so I'm very, very hopeful that we will get that plan approved. Once approved, I'll bring it back to the commission for your acceptance, do a motion to accept, and then we should be able to call it good.
Thank you.
And then finally, I had a really bad miscalculation on my budget that Debbie Nelson and I spoke about this morning. Last year, when we first purchased the VOG system and we signed the contracts for a 3-year maintenance agreement, a motion was made to take that money out of capital improvements. And in my small mind, I interpreted that as that's where the money would come from in subsequent years. So I did not add that to my county budget this year. I did have a conversation with Debbie, and she's going to create a line item now in our budget for the maintenance of that system. But it does mean that I need to, I think she said, use cash carry forward. Is that what you said, Debbie?
I
To
did.
pay for the
2021.
13,000?
Yeah, your
Okay.
2021 budget needs to be amended by $13,000 for the software maintenance. And it will come from cash carry forward.
And then in subsequent budget years, it will be a line item in my budget. So to avoid this situation again. It was included in my city budget because it had been in there, and we resubmitted that budget as the same as it was last year. So that piece of it's covered, so we just need to cover the county share.
So this is something that will be on an agenda for another time?
No. Okay.
Okay, so do we need to make a motion on that?
Yes, we do, to amend the emergency management budget, the 2021 budget by $13,000. It will be from cash carry forward, so there will be no effect on what is levied in 2021.
Okay, so commissioners, do you have any questions of Kari or Debbie?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would so move that motion to put that funding from cash carry forward into emergency management's 2021 budget.
Thank you. We have a second.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second then to amend the emergency management budget for 2021, by $13,000 from cash carry forward. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So tell me, Yochi, how's that working for you through all of the different events?
You know, it's actually helped us keep the events separate and distinct and not mix things up very much. So I am due to go to remote training here in August. So once we get the level 1 training done, we'll be able to share that information with all of our users. And then I'll schedule level 2 for either sometime in the fall or shortly after the first of the year. It is a really intuitive system considering we have all these users in it and not one of us has had any training. So it's been kind of refreshing that way, that we are able to use it and it's functional and it's doing a great job for us tracking. When the state asks for things, we're able to just go in there and, copy and paste into an email and send it to them. So it's been very helpful.
Great. Thank you very much. Anything else for us, Kari?
I don't think so, ma'am. Thank you all for your consideration.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Next item is Finance and Tax Director, Ms. Nelson.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I have scanned in 2 sections of code about the November election, how it could be conducted. The first section is it could be done by mail, and that would be a choice by the county commission. In addition to vote by mail, you would have 1 polling site you would have to designate. If you decided to go vote by mail, there is a requirement in law that I would send out an application to every active voter in the central voter file. We have about over 11,000 applications right now, so that's about 35% that are already in. I wouldn't have to send again to those people. So there's about 21,000 apps that I would have to send out. Or you could use polling sites instead of going vote by mail. It is the responsibility of the city, if the precincts are located in a city, to select those polling sites. So if you decided to have polling sites, you would have to ask the city to decide on where the polling sites would be, and we would still, or I would still be conducting the election and finding the workers for those polling sites. I would recommend if we do it that way, we would let the city know that we want to have just 1 polling site in the city of Grand Forks. And then in that section of code, it also talks about utilizing voting centers. And I would recommend that the commission decide on a voting center if you go that route. I would recommend that we go vote by mail and designate the Allaire Center as our polling site that will be open on election day.
So, excuse me. So approximately how many people would you need to have, well, with the vote by mail, you're going to need to have many here in the office working just like this last time. But at the polling site, how many would you need roughly?
I'm thinking that I would need about 40 people. And that would include people that their job would just be sanitizing. Every time someone uses a voting booth, it's got to be wiped down. And every time someone uses a pen, the pen would have to be wiped down. I'm thinking we should buy a large supply of pens, and each person gets their own pen. So they leave with the pen that they're using at our polling site.
But you would have that whether it's the first option or the second option, right?
Right, we would have that Right, but we may have more polling sites if we go with the
Right.
second option and therefore more people.
Well,
We don't know that.
I'm thinking all that I've heard about this voting, the last election, people really liked the vote by mail. And I'm thinking that we're still going to be in the throes of a virus pandemic. And my guess is with the simplicity of the vote by mail and the COVID, that the majority of our people that vote are going to do it via by mail. So, commissioners, questions?
Madam Chair, I would,
Dave, I have a question on timing.
Yes, sir.
We need to decide that this now or the next meeting or August 15th?
We have to decide by the 64th day prior to the election, which would be August 31st. But I would recommend that if you are ready to make a decision to do that today, there's another part of it, the early voting precinct, that I will be bringing back to you in August. Think about if you want to do an early voting precinct. But I would really like to know if you want to go vote by mail, or if you want to do polling sites. For surely we want to tell the city to start thinking about it, because it'll take them some time and maybe some time for us to convince them of what we would like to see.
But with polling sites, if they went with max that they could have, or what we typically have when we don't have vote by mail, how many polling sites do we typically have?
14
And there's how many people at each of those roughly?
at each, 5 workers, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, 5 at each.
Okay, all right.
But we would need more, because we don't have anybody, just, their duty is just cleaning, sanitizing. So we would need more than that.
Yeah, they wouldn't be at a polling site if it were busy and if we didn't have vote by mail. I mean, 5 people taking care of a precinct cleaning wouldn't do.
No, because they have other duties to do besides cleaning, so.
Commissioners, other questions?
Madam Chair, this is Tom. I just, a couple of comments. The last election was extremely successful vote by mail. I'm not sure why you would want to vote any other way right now, because it's very safe, efficient. I was just amazed by it. Although we did have complaints about it, I'm not sure why. Some indicated they couldn't figure out how to vote by mail. And boy, you just make your mark like in a ballot and put a stamp on it and mail it in. Actually the drop off worked great. But I think we should proceed, make our decision today and give Ms. Nelson as much time as possible to prepare. And I would like to proceed with just vote by mail, but I know we're going to have complaints. So I think we should proceed with the vote by mail option with the one polling site at the Alaris. And that's going to be a problem, I think, manning that spot, but we'll have to try as best we can. And I really think that we should probably consider the early polling site out there also, because it'll probably drop the number of people that show up on election day, which would make it much easier to control COVID-19 issues, and people would feel more secure. Thank you.
Do we even have an option to go just vote by mail?
No,
That isn't an option.
it isn't
It's
enough.
either, it's
You-
vote by mail in one precinct
And one
or
site.
all the precincts.
Yeah.
Okay. But I
Madam Chair,
don't disagree with
question?
Commissioner Fall. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Dave.
Yes.
The early voting site, if we're going to do that, with the Alaris being the election day site, the early voting site would be out there for what period of time, and how would we have to staff that?
I would have it, I have the Alaris booked for the week before. If you want to go further than that. The law allows that, I can go 15 days, but I'd have to check with the Alara Center to see if they would be available to allow us that time. I would use the same workers for early voting as I would for election day. So if I can get workers to work, and I'll just have them keep working, and they would also work election day. Now I'm going to have my separate absentee ballot precinct going on at the same time, and those will be different workers. So I'm thinking I'm going to need about 80 workers.
One more topic. As Commissioner Falk said, we did get some blowback last time. And I think it's because people didn't understand how safe the process is. So if there's a way to get this out, not only in the Herald, which nobody reads anymore since it's not delivered, but also social media, Facebook, somewhere, places like that.
Yes, we will do that.
Oh, that'd be great to train people so they understand that it's not some fraud kind of thing. Excuse me a second.
Yeah, so if I could get a motion to vote by mail in Grand Berks County and designate the Alara Center as our polling site for election day, that would be great. And then I will bring back information or a request for the early voting precinct at the second meeting, probably in August.
And I would say no more than a week.
2 a week.
I would make that motion that we vote by mail with a polling site being designated as the Alaris, with early voting a week prior to.
Can we not do the early voting yet?
Okay.
And just do the.
Okay,
Just do
I'll leave that off the motion then. Just mail of voting with the primary voting site being the Alaris, and we'll leave it at that for right now.
Okay, we have a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second then to go with the first option there with the vote by mail and Alaris is our polling site. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. It'll be interesting to see how many actually show up at the polling site now that we have vote by mail and they've experienced it once. I mean, there will be people that will show, and because that's what they like to do, but it will be interesting to see.
And I think that was the bigger issue, was the fact that there was no designated voting site, where
Well, it's
people
different.
could go in.
It was so different,
Yeah, it was different.
And so,
But I think we just covered it now, so it,
yeah, but I think in the end, people were pleased, or at least what we heard from were pleased. So, and I didn't hear any negatives, so. Okay. Next item is Director of Administration, Mr. Ford.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you. I have about 8 different things I need to bring to your attention, so I'm going to be as expedient as possible, but will stand for questions, of course. The first thing is, you should have a bid before you from Greg's Lawn Care and Snow Removal. After our contract expired with Greg's, Mr. Gashesky had recommended that we put out an ad for bids, just to see what's out there. And Greg's was actually the only person, or the only entity, excuse me, that responded to the bids. And that's what you have before you. Per Mr. Gashesky's recommendations, we opened up the scope a little bit to help make snow removal a little more streamlined, but also make sure that whichever vendor would get the contract was a little more expedient in responding to snow removal, especially in the ramp area. So I would ask we recommend this bid first of all, and I would ask that the board accept the bid and the chair would sign the bid, and then Mr. Grzeszewski will get back with Greg's for a contract, which will have Ms. Lomstead take a look at.
Okay, you've heard the request.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we accept the bid for snow removal by Greg's Lawn Care for, what is it, 300?
What do we have,
Price on
well,
that?
I guess it's how, the cost is, there's no set dollar amount other than by the hour.
That's correct, Madam Chair, and that's a typical bid for snow removal. If the board would recall, the first time we did this, we put out bids for a monthly set rate, if you will, and we didn't receive any bids, but that's because most contractors contacted me directly and said that it's a bad deal for both parties because we could have a really dry winter and we're paying out the nose for very little services, or we could have the worst winter on record and we get one heck of a deal. It's easier to budget for, but it's not industry standard. So the prior contract with Greg's Lawn Care is also hourly. And so this one is too. And when we did it the first time around, they all came in an hourly basis after we corrected that little issue with the industry standard. So what you're looking at here, what I'm requesting is that the board accepts the bid as is, and then we go back to the contractors.
Can you talk louder? What did you say? We accept the bid and then what?
I would ask that the board accepts the bid, and that you, ma'am, as the chair, sign the bid, and then we have to then go back to Greg's Lawn Care saying, yep, we accept the bid. We need that contractor snow removal services. They would send that to us. I would give that to Ms. Lomstead just to give her a stamp of approval. And then I would bring that back to the board to sign the contract.
Madam Chair, this is Tom. I've got a question of Mr. Ford. I'm wondering how much money we have in our budget.
Ms. Nelson, how much did you put in this year for snow removal?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Falk, I believe we put $81,000 in 2020 and 2021.
That sounds correct. And how did we do, Ms. Nelson, as far as?
I think we were at about 45,000 this year.
So we should be good then. I thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is Dave.
Yes, sir.
How do the rates compare with their contract last year? Or have they gone up or just staying the same?
No, similar rates, commissioning, and I actually cross-checked that. I knew that this question would come up. So very similar rates.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the bid. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to accept the bid from Greg's Lawn Care for snow removal. When does that season start? First snow?
Yes, ma'am. It typically goes from October 1 to April 30.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. The next item, this is really a heads up for the board. The Office of Economic Adjustment, which is under the Air Force, we as a county have a long-standing history with them. They provided us a lot of grant money for base retention, BRAC transition, and Grand Sky. And as such, I've maintained a good relationship with the gentleman, Mr. Jay Sweat, who has typically been our rep. He reached out to me in February at an ABC conference, and he said, "Hey, Ford," because that's how he always calls me, "Ford, I have a grant that you guys need to apply for." And so it's the Space Resiliency Grant. I typed up a little bit in my memo about what this grant entails. It's not going to cost us anything to apply. Essentially, this type of project would identify any encroachment issues, energy resiliency, natural threats, cyber threats to our installation. It's a good project because we can identify if there's an issue with our installation. It's a great way to exercise our relationship with the installation. And then OEA helps the county correct any deficiencies if there are any. So it's a great way to, again, tell our major command that owns our base that we have a great base, so put more missions here, please. If we were to be awarded the grant, obviously I would need to bring it back to the commission for your approval to first accept the grant, have the chair sign the grant contract. But the other stipulation is there's always a 10% match in these instances. However, in the past, the county has met that 10% match through in-kind. And I can't recall the last time we actually put hard dollars for the 10% match. So I have visited with BRIC counterparts, our counterparts at the city, DDC, with my time, with Commissioner Falks and Ingen's time on the BRIC, and our colleagues at our partner institutions, we should have no issue reaching that 10% in kind. So just letting you all know that at OEA's encouragement, I'm working with the base to submit that application. And if we are awarded it, I will bring it to the board for your review, and then you have to approve it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one. So I'm going to start off with C as apologizing to the board as I screwed up. However, my screw up's worse than Ms. Gale. She didn't really screw up. I dropped the ball on something. At the start of the budget session, we were planning for 2021, I had started a process with having Mr. Grishesky's job description reclassified with HR. But through everything, and I won't make excuses, but through everything that went on, I dropped the ball on it, and I let it fall through the cracks. So what I have before you is a request to reclassify Mr. Grishesky's job from a 12.5 or a grade 12 step 5 to a grade 14 step 3. And again, my goal was to have this done before the budget was accepted. I profusely apologize for this error. There would be an additional cost in the 2020 budget of $1,462. Buildings and Grounds can absorb that because Mr. Grishesky was hired at a grade 12. And so that's easily absorbed. There would be an additional charge to the Buildings and Grounds budget of $2,621 for 2021, as this was not budgeted for. I'll give you a little history, members of the commission, why we went this route. When Brian retired, Mr. Grindy took over as the interim. And so he was moved to the classification that Brian was at. But Mr. Grindy, he just wasn't interested in the management part of his job. And therefore the commission put Buildings and Grounds directly beneath me, which I was happy to do. When we advertised for Mr. Grindy's replacement after he retired, Ms. Steele and myself reviewed it and thought we would probably be best to keep it at the current classification and continue with having Buildings and Grounds under administration, as we just didn't know what the future held. What I can tell you is Mr. Grishesky has been a phenomenal find. We got very lucky in hiring him, and the job he has done is beyond commendable. He brings such a wealth of knowledge of both facilities management, procurement, and personnel management that he has really filled into the role of manager. He was hired as a coordinator, and he is doing the job of a manager. And as I illustrated in my memo, Madam Chair, members of the commission, it's more efficient that Mr. Gershesky, who is in the building far more than I am, even before COVID, who has a working knowledge of the building, who knows what he needs from his staff, from schedules, from contracts. He should be the one in charge of all of that, and not myself, and he has done a far better job than I ever could. So what I'm trying to do here, Madam Chair, members of the commission, is just make sure that his job reflects his actual duties, what he's performing. And so therefore, I'm asking that the board would approve this request to bring him from a buildings and grounds coordinator to a buildings and grounds manager. Move him from a grade 12 step 5 to a grade 14 step 3 because that meets the 3% minimum step movement. In talking with Ms. Nelson, the additional funds in 2021 would come from cash carried forward if the board doesn't approve this. That's my request, and happy to answer any questions.
Do you have an effective date?
August 1, ma'am.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ford?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would move approval of that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the reclassification of Mr. Jazeski's position from coordinator to grounds manager and proper grade steps. Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, members of the commission. So that's a good segue into the next thing we have, ma'am. And I'm going to give this to Mr. Gershesky, as I believe he's on. We got a quote from Border States Electric as we have more problems with our HVAC system and our chillers. And I emailed that out to the board, I believe, this morning, that quote. But Bill, can I turn it over to you just to brief the commission on what they're looking at? And this, Madam Chair, this funding, we would ask that it come out of capital. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. Yeah, we started out from last year with the compressor failure in the four-stage compressor on the roof of the county office building. That compressor was replaced now in June, and upon commissioning that compressor by Chiller Systems, they found some other maintenance items that we had to address at that time, which those repairs were then performed and done. And upon commissioning that compressor that was replaced, we found that we had also one bad breaker on a bank of 10 breakers in that McQuay rooftop unit. And that one breaker, being it's a designed piece of the McQuay chiller system, it's a protected part number under proprietary engineering and things like that. So the price on one breaker, which should be a $500 to $800 breaker, is nearly $2,100 list. I did negotiate with Border States on that price, because finding the non-proprietary protected parts through non-distributorship, it can be sourced cheaper. They did bring that price down to $1,760 in freight, and then buying through distributorship, and that you're following all the electrical codes and all those items like that. I was able to isolate the problem with Corey with some direction from Chiller Systems rather than having them pay an additional rather than having them charge us an additional labor and troubleshooting and that, we found an isolated problem by swapping some components around up there, and we know what it's going to take that it is going to take this one breaker to fix this one problem, and then the chiller would be running at 100%, of course, until the next failure we have in it. But currently that breaker is 1760 in freight.
So Madam Chair, I was originally looking at the building and grounds repairs budget, but after talking with Mr. Falk, the way things have been going this year with our HVACs and our boilers, just the buildings and grounds and how these expenses are adding up, he had encouraged me, and I agree, to ask for the $2,100 to come out of 2020 capital improvements to replace this breaker system.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Ford, and yeah, even this afternoon I received some messages and a phone conversation with Bridgie Hansen about there's a platform that's made out of wood, actually was made by our prior buildings and grounds people, that the chiller sits on top of the 7th floor. Bill, is that the same area we're talking about?
Yeah, that platform that you're mentioning there, that's a work surface. Yeah, that's a work surface for both for us as B&G staff to do service work on the chiller and cleaning the coils, as well as when a contractor like Chiller Systems is here doing work off of that, they have to work on.
Yeah, and anyway, that is really a cobbled together piece of structure and needs to be replaced. Our contractors don't even like to go up on the platform to work on the chiller. So, but anyway, between Bridgie and Bill, they found a contractor in town that will build this one out of steel and iron for a little over $2,000. And Bridgie believes that falls under risk management to stop injuries from the employees and contractors that come to the building. So she's having that through Bill ordered, and that part will be paid out of the risk management budget, which she has the money for that. So there are a lot of problems up on 7th floor. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, just to kind of build on that, the buildings and grounds repair line item is at 60% spent. Typically this time of year we're at 40. And if I'm just doing some rough Devils Lake High School math, when I look back at some of the other B&G repairs that the commission have paid for through capital improvements, we'd be closer to 75, maybe 80. So it's a year where everything is coming to a head. And Mr. Grzeszewski and I have discussed about the future. He's planning to do kind of like what Ms. Leon did. She did a capital improvement summary for us. He's going to be taking a thorough look at all of our facilities issues that he sees coming down on the pipe that we aren't going to be able to avoid, so that we can present a clearer picture for maybe the 2022 budget or capital improvements budgets. Mr. Grzeszewski will be able to say to the board, these are the real problems we've got coming down the pipe. That way, I'm hoping to avoid having to come every 2 weeks and say, Madam Chair, we've got problems.
Okay. Anyone have questions? Hearing none, we approved. We had a motion and a second.
Nope. We need one.
Okay, may I have a motion from the floor, please?
Go ahead, Cynthia.
No, go ahead, Tom. I'll second for you.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would move approval of the repairs on the chiller. I guess we're going to be doing that anyway, and that the payment for that come out of capital improvements this time.
I would second that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm writing, so, okay, so we have a motion and a second then to move forward with the repairs on the chiller, payments out of the capital improvements. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, we're getting near the end. Madam Chair, members of the commission, we successfully submitted our second CARES Act reimbursement application. About $38,000 in expenses have been sent on to the state for review. Madam Chair, I did send a document to Ms. Nelson for you to sign. It's like the last one you did, ma'am. It's just certifying that, yes, these are our expenses and that we're not trying to defraud the state. So she has that for you now.
Okay,
And
thank you.
the last thing I have is a quick update on the recovery team process. You all heard Ms. Swanson's report today. The recovery team met last week and we unanimously agreed we're backing off the September 1 opening to the public recommendation. We just don't think that would be responsible of us as a recovery team to come to the board and recommend that at this point in time, not with how cases are trending. Ms. Field and Ms. Gels have been having discussions with various department heads on what they would need to, or what it would look like to bring some staff back to the office and doing appointment only. There's more to come on that. We also came out of that recovery meeting with a survey, and Human Resources is going to work on finalizing a survey to be sent to all employees, mostly in the COP, about what they want to see, such as safeguards in place to come back to work. So that'll go out soon. It's our goal to bring the board our final recommendation and approval during the August 18th meeting for your review and approval. Any questions on the restart? I'm happy to answer.
Questions, commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for the update on that. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. That's all I have.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Next item is state's attorney. And may I have a motion to temporarily recess the regular Grand Forks County Commission meeting?
Madam Chair, I would so move.
I want to finish.
I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. And convene in executive session pursuant to North Dakota Century Code 4404 19.1 subsections 2, 5, and 9 for the purpose of attorney consultation with Ms. Wamstead regarding negotiation step strategy pertaining to the Northwood Bridge potential litigation. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I would so move.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and I'm going to do a roll call vote, please, individually. So Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Falk,
Yes.
Commissioner Ann,
Yeah.
Commissioner Peach,
Yes.
and Commissioner Knopf. Yes. Okay, so the motion passed, so we'll now move into executive session for discussion of in the executive session. Would anyone like to make a motion at this time?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we reject the offer presented to us by the insurance company relative to
All right. Have anything else for us?
Yes, I do have one other item, Madam Chair. Other item is asking for a reclassification of an open position we currently have in our office. We had a recent retirement of a file clerk in our office, which is a grade 5 position. My request is to reclassify this position to a legal 2 position, which is a grade 8. I've spoken with HR and Ms. Nelson about this reclassification. Due to some other staffing changes in our office, we do have room in our budget for this change, and so it shouldn't impact the county budget for 2020 or what is planned for 2021. Just so you're aware of the basis of our request is that our file clerks, one of their primary duties was to complete discovery requests that came in from Defense Counsel. Recently, our office has moved to doing discovery electronically, which has eliminated a lot of the duties that our file clerks previously did, and now place a lot of those duties onto our legal 2 positions. And so the shift of that burden obviously makes sense for us to need more help on one type of position over the other. Additionally, we're also working on moving our audiovisual discovery to electronic means as well. And so once we make that transition, that also would take some of the job duties away from the file clerks and place those duties on the legal 2s as well. In addition to that, it's also been an issue in our office where our legal 2s have a large burden of different tasks that they take on, one being closing files once the case is concluded. And we have a significant number of files that need to be closed, so having another legal 2 on board would assist us in accomplishing that task as well.
So there's no ramifications to anyone else? It's HR? Nope. Michelle?
No, this person, the file clerk position has already been vacated. The person gave their notice and they've been done. And it makes perfect sense for the type of work and the organization that Ms. Wamstead needs in her office. And then there's no budgetary impact as well because there was a retirement of someone who was at the top of the scale recently, so.
And that's a legal assistant too?
Legal secretary too.
Legal secretary too. Okay, commissioners, do you have any comments or questions?
This is Tom. Ironically, I was talking a couple of nights ago with a former state's attorney named Jones, who you guys might remember, although he's kind of dropped off the map. But we were both reminiscing about the file clerk positions that, you know, a dozen years ago or so when we created some of those slots, you pretty much had to know the alphabet and then you filed all the reports alphabetically, and that was pretty much it because I asked Jones if he was willing to come back and help out. He thought it was beyond his skill level. he was more of the alphabet guy. But now, it's evolved so much, and Ms. Wamstead is well aware of it, that the skill level that's required is significantly greater. And so I think it's critical that we reclassify that job position. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? So do we need a motion on this? Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to move forward with the reclassification of this position from file clerk position to legal secretary 2?
Madam Chair, I will make that motion to reclassify the file clerk position to legal secretary 2 in the state attorney's office.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Anything else? Haley?
Thank you. No, I have nothing further.
Thank you. Okay, we're at committee reports. Commissioner Ross, what do you have for us?
I had a MPO meeting last Wednesday, and we discussed the projects that are currently going and the ones that are be coming up for 2021. Plus the audit report by Brady Marks was presented to the committee, and everything looked good in the report. So,
Commissioner Peach.
Last week I had a Board of Health meeting, and we're in the process of scheduling a special hearing. There's a property in Grand Forks that needs to be cleaned up, and we've gone through this process before and gotten this property cleaned up, but now it's again at infestation level. So we're taking the measure, we're going to the next measure, which is scheduling the public hearing. And this coming week, I have an airport authority board meeting on Thursday morning.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Falk?
Yes, last week we had a very productive meeting, I thought, with Mayor Bochinsky. Commissioner Ingham was involved, Mr. Ford, talking about the BRIC, and generally I brought up the fact that we partner with the city on a lot of different projects, some of our departments, and through the last several years that partnership has worked really well, and both entities have moved forward with that. And so I think it went well, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting.
Okay, great. Commissioner Engen?
I second what Commissioner Falk said, but then the other thing that I was involved in was this ad hoc committee of Engen, Wamstead, and Nick or West. So that's, other than that, I didn't have any regular scheduled committee.
Okay, thank you. I had Fair Board meeting on July 8th, and so kind of business as usual. It's quiet because we have no fair, and or it would be past us anyhow. But and they just, a heads up, they haven't connected with a fundraiser yet to help with fundraising for the grandstand repairs, and so I think they need to be done by next year, and so strongly encourage them to reach out and visit with potential fundraisers. Having been or involved with the Veterans Memorial Park, and we have done that for years, that fundraising, well, our community is very generous, and it's been a wonderful experience. It takes a long time to collect and to bring people on board, and so like I say, strongly encourage them that they want to make that a priority. So library board meeting was on July 15th, and basically the library's renovation is pretty much completed. They are not open yet. They are open for pickup and drop off of books. And that's been going very well. They sometimes have 100 cars that come a day. And so none of the public comes into the library. They call ahead, the books and whatnot are waiting for them, and then they run them out individually, put them in the trunk of the vehicle, and the patron drives away. So it's worked really well, and they've had a great fun with that. But now they, you probably saw in the paper where there was a staff member that was identified as having COVID-19, and so they aren't doing the drive-through anymore, and so they're basically shut down until further notice. And we had a meeting on the 16th along with Mr. Ford with the institutional partners meeting that consists of county, city, Altru, Air Force Base, UND, public health was there, and along with the mayor. And so the purpose of that was to discuss COVID-19 and the testing needs for each of the entities that were participating. And so, and also the capacity for us to do testing. And so that's a process that will be ongoing, and further discussions on that one. And then emergency management monthly meeting was just yesterday. And so you all know it's a busy spot. And so, but we had good discussion, and we have reports that are due. So the board is stepping up to help get involved with that as much as we can to help that team out. So that's all I have. So the next item is unfinished business. And we have none, and then we have correspondence, and we have a couple letters. One's from the Grand Forks Community Service and Restitution Program, and it's a nice thank you for the contribution that Grand Forks County Commission provided to them to continue their services, which are a benefit to Grand Forks County. And so, and then we have Northern Valley Law Enforcement, a nice thank you that came from the park board on their behalf for our $10,000 donation. So other than that, is there anything else that needs to come before the commission? Hearing none, does anyone care to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.